This is Hannah from Hall Beer Shop, and you're listening to Daftaboutcraft.
Daftaboutcraft is sponsored by Hall Beer Shop, based in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. You can find a huge selection of craft beers in-store and online. Check them out at hall-beer.com.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
It's that time again. Welcome to episode number 29 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcasts. We're here again, the two Daves, me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
And welcome along. We've got a packed podcast for you. Got a really exciting interview with a brewery who's been making a bit of a splash on the scene, and we predict great things for them. Their beers are sensational. We love the can artwork. We love the whole package. We are talking to Jack Barron of Barron's Brewery. Hopefully you've had some of their beers. If not, we recommend you get them and listen to our interview with Jack. Great chat, and you can find out all about them. What else have we got, Dave?
This episode sees another triumphant return of our drink-along section in association with sponsors Hall Beer Shop. And this time there's a special theme to it. They've managed to get in some Scandinavian breweries, but not Scandinavian breweries that you perhaps heard of. We certainly hadn't heard of them. So we're not talking Omnipollo or Amundsen here. It's a bit different. And if you stay tuned, you can find out a bit more about those in our drink along section.
And hopefully you've seen us mention the breweries on our socials. You've got the beers to drink along with us. And you'll be doing that. And you can drink them as we drink them. And we can compare notes on the socials. Now, Hype or Tripe this time is an interesting one because often we go big ABVs or it's a big stout. This isn't big, but it's a beer with a difference, Dave.
Yeah, so Attic, who are local to yourself, have brewed the first ever all-oat pale ale. And all they have used is oats, as you would guess. There's no barley, no malt, I believe.
That's right, the oats are taking the place of all that, so it promises to be really interesting. I've seen pictures of the beer, it looks fantastic.
I'm fascinated to see what an all-oat IPA can deliver.
So we will find out in Hype or Tripe. We've also got usual features, tried and tested, and we're going to kick it off, as always, with our feature called Brew to Me, where we both get a beer from a brewery we haven't tried before. Dave is going to kick us off as usual. Who have you got this time, Dave?
So this time I made friends with Philip from Simple Things Fermentations. I can't remember why this popped up, but it popped up thanks to those clever tracking cookies. I think it popped up when I was on social media or something, an advert for them. And I was immediately intrigued. So I had a look. I've spoken to Phil via email, and hopefully you'll get to hear a bit more about him in a future episode. He's very keen to come on, and we're very keen to have him on. Definitely got some German heritage or roots, or that's what he enjoys brewing, because there's some of the stuff there really stood out. There's a Pilsner, there's a Hop Weiss, there's a Rausch beer, which they've done as a collab with Thornbridge.
This stuff sounds right up your street, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But what I've actually gone for is one of their seasonal beers, because they do seasonal stuff. They've also got a couple of Saisons, which are in bottles, which I nearly went for, but I'm saving those. And this is a seasonal Scottish Light, which I forgot to say where they're from. They're from Glasgow. And this is a low alcohol, malt forward Scottish ale. It's only 3%. And it said it should be light on flavour, but dark on colour. And it certainly is. It comes out very dark.
It seems to me that Scotland have got a bit of an underrated craft beer scene. There's a lot of breweries up there who fly below the radar somewhat.
Yeah, absolutely. So I imagine this is taking the twist on the Wee Heavy, which is a sort of malty style of beer, and it usually weighs in about 8-10%. I know it's had a bit of a renaissance.
Yes, I've seen them around a lot recently. Everybody's knocking out a Wee Heavy.
I've never been wild about them. I sort of associate them actually with Belgian beers, and it's actually one of the few styles of the sort of Belgian stuff I don't really get on with. They're a bit, once you've had one, you've had them all for me. But anyway, this Scottish Light is 3%. Doesn't really give much away other than that. I like the can art, which is nice and blue and orange. Looks like Coke. Quite lively. It's not much of a head now, but it is sort of, there's quite a lot of bubbles in here. Smells quite malty.
That's what I would expect it to smell like. How's it taste?
Okay, that's not really what I expected. I think what I might needed to have done is, rather than have this stored in the fridge, I think a little bit warmer would definitely help. So they say on the can, a slow and low fermentation keeps things clean and crisp. It's definitely clean and allows a delicate array of malt flavors to shine. This underrepresented style overperforms relative to its ABV. It works equally well in summer or winter and ages well. Okay. I think when this warms up, it might sort of get a bit more body. It's a little bit thin at the moment, but I'm not going to blame the beer there. I'm going to blame that I didn't let it get up to room temp.
Or do you want me to open my brew to me candidate and let yours warm up a little bit? And then we can come back to yours and see if it's changed a little bit. That's probably quite a good idea.
Yeah, mine's almost got a little bit of a Rausch sort of nose. It's a little bit smoky. So I'm hopeful with this. Just needs to warm up.
If you remember on the last episode, my brew to me was from Wales. And I'm in Wales again, and this is another product of my trip to Bottle and Barrel in Aberystwyth. And this brewery is called Dog's Window Brewery. And the reason I picked this is because obviously I haven't had them before, but also on a previous trip to Wales, I Googled Welsh craft breweries and Dog's Window came up and their address came up. And so I tootled round in the car to the address and it was just a house. I didn't know what I was going to find, but it was just a house. As often is the case with these tiny breweries, it's obviously all brewed there, maybe in the garage, maybe in the shed. I couldn't really go knock on the door and say, hello, can I have some of your beer? But I did find some in the Bottle and Barrel, so I'm really quite excited about this one. The beer is called My Favourite Tree, and all the names are dog related, so obviously the dog has a favourite tree. The dog features on the artwork at the top there. And this is a 4.7% pale ale with Amarillo, Eldorado and Mosaic.
That's not the most usual of combinations, actually.
No, a little bit different, isn't it? Mosaic, of course, we've featured on our One Hop Wonders on the last episode. And this was canned on the 10th of April.
Oh, that's pretty fresh still. That's only just over a month old.
Oh, Dave, explain the pour. What have I done?
God's sake. Luckily, there's not a visual aspect to this podcast because Dave has poured more head than he has beer on his first attempt. That looks like one where it's the barrel's gone, more or less.
Isn't it? This is no reflection on the beer whatsoever. It's a reflection of my appalling skills. Anyway,
it's quite a deep orange by the looks of it.
It is actually. Maybe deeper orange than I thought it would be. We found out last time on One Hop Wonders, malt plays a huge part in the colour of these beers. So, you need to know the kind of malt being used to work out what sort of colour it is. So this has obviously been brewed with a malt that gives a darker colour. Let me taste it now. I think what I'm getting most of there actually is the Amarillo.
Oh, that's not bad. I like Amarillo.
It's not the Mosaic, that's for sure. There may be some Eldorado coming in there at the end. That's very nice. I've said it before, I do love this feature where we, breweries we've never heard of and they're knocking out great beers. And as we know, this is from the garage or the back garden. It's incredible, isn't it?
I think it's probably the feature I enjoy the most. And if there's anyone out there listening now and they know of breweries and you're sort of screaming into your, well, not your headphones, but you're listening along and thinking, why haven't you ever found these guys yet? Let us know, because we'd be very open to a Brew to Me special where we sort of get, maybe 4, 5, 6 brewers that we've never heard of and try all their beers and just do something really different, because I love doing this one as well. Yeah,
and we could get a couple of them on to chat to us as well.
Absolutely.
We had Pinkers on the last episode and they were a Brew to Me previously, so it's a great source of potential guests as well, isn't it, when we find these brewers?
Yeah, if you see these beers and you don't know about them yourselves and you want to know a bit more, send them our way and we'll do our best to try and find out.
So Dog's Window Brewery, what I'm thinking here is that this is not easy to get hold of because obviously it was in Wales where I found it. So I guess their geographical spread isn't too great at the moment, but if this is anything to go by, impressive. I've got another one in the fridge actually of theirs, so I'm looking forward to that. Is yours warmed up a bit now?
It has warmed up a bit now. What I think, even though it says it's Scottish Light, and actually I agree, it says works equally well in summer or winter. I think it'd work perfectly in autumn. That's where I'd like to have this beer. When the nights get coming in, but the sun's still there.
You do love to be different, don't you?
It's not quite enough of a summer beer for me, but perhaps that's just because I'm not used to drinking this style. I don't think I've ever had a Scottish Light.
So it's not a kind of a summer banger or a really thick, boozy, wintry drink. I can see where you're coming from.
it would be nice, like I say, you have it in the autumn and perhaps you've got a stout or a porter that you're going to have later on. So you don't necessarily want a pale because the night's drawing in and it's getting a bit colder, but so you want something to warm up to. For me, that's where this fits in.
I love going on a narrowboat. Been quite a few narrowboat holidays, and I often go in autumn. That sounds like the sort of beer you've just moored up for the day. You've got a bit wet in the rain, bit cold. You come in, light the fire on the boat, have a glass of that.
I'd say that's an excellent way to use that beer. Or if you'd moored up and then you went to the pub and they had something like this on cask. Spot on. So I like it. I'm very excited to try their other beers because I think that it's well documented. The German style of beers are my favourites. So really intrigued to see what they do with that. And as I say, hopefully Phil will join us to talk about those beers as well on a future episode.
Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1.
Okay, well, it's the time of the podcast where we get a guest on, and we're really excited to get one of craft beer's hottest properties at the moment. I think that's the way we should describe him. It's Jack Barron from Barron's Brewing. How you doing, Jack?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, we're delighted. We're delighted because we tried your beer recently on one of our drink-along features on the podcast, and we loved it. And now we've got you to grill you and find out all about you. It's brilliant. First question I've got to ask you, we both thought this. Your can artwork is very reminiscent of Daya. And also, I looked at it just today and I thought, it also reminds me of Beak as well. Is that coincidence or is that intentional or?
Yeah, I get those two comparisons quite regularly, and it's quite hard to take that anything other than quite complimentary.
Oh, I mean, they're both.
It's absolutely meant in a good way.
The white label is very obviously a Beak sort of thing. Cartoony artworks, very Daya. They're two of my favourites. I can't say I've not drawn any inspiration from them. My girlfriend's from Cheltenham, so we spent a lot of time at Daya.
I knew there must be something. That's the link.
And there's only so many ways you can decorate a can, and you can overlap with someone. So Daya and Beak aren't bad ones to overlap with.
Not only is the exterior of the can reminiscent of two great breweries, what's inside the cans is also tremendous from what we've had so far.
Thank you.
And the size, because they're 500 mils, which I love.
Yeah.
Not many places do that now. Everyone's gone 440. It's really nice. They always stand out in your fridge because they're always just that bit bigger and
they got a head over everyone else.
Yeah,
exactly. So you can't usually stand them straight up, so they have to go on their side and they stick out a bit more. And it's just silly little things like that, but it will draw you into it rather than it being another 440 in a row type thing.
Yeah, I didn't really have a preference until I was chatting with one of the artists when I was sort of thinking of when we were trying to work the brand out before we got going, and he just liked the look of 500 more. It's a nicer canvas to have an image on in his eyes, and I agree. Yeah, exactly. And it also makes the maths very easy because everything's divided by 2. So it's really nice and easy. And if you're paying more than you would for your standard beers, you want to know you're getting enough to fill you up.
So we were talking to you a bit before we started about your journey in craft beer, and it seems that everything in your life for over the last 10 years or so has been building up to this point where you start your own brewery and come in with this almighty bang, which you seem to have done.
It was always the plan. Yeah, it just took some time and some balls to like the big dive into my own world. I think every brewer in the country has the sort of fancy of doing it themselves. Yeah, it takes quite a lot of time and money, but it's very satisfying.
I'm going to guess it's not as glamorous as you maybe once thought it might be.
It's not very glamorous. It's great fun, and I'm loving doing it all alone at the moment because you have to do everything, and the brewing bit, that's about 1 day a week. Of actually brew day is 1 day a week, and then there's packaging day, which is at least 1 day a week. Marketing and admin and HMRC and all the sales and the distribution, everything just.
And which bit do you enjoy the best? Is it the brewing bit?
I do love the brewing bit. I love manual work, and I love the actual brew day. But no, all of it is just so different. And actually, the bit I love a lot is doing the distribution locally and just chatting to all the people who are selling it on my behalf, which is it's just great. You get to see like first-hand reactions of what everyone thinks, and it's such a massive, important part about making craft beer is having people who really love it selling it as well. And without that, it doesn't matter how good the beer is if no one's going to buy it. So yeah, that's great. But yeah, all of it's fun. The admin's not so much fun.
as Dave said, it's been 10 years in the making. So sort of, if you don't mind, just take us back to how it's come to this point. And then also, we've done these 10 years. What made you think now's the time to take the leap and set out on your own?
I finished school at 18 and had absolutely no idea what to do with my life. I was going to do art school. I'd done maths and physics and art at A level, so very not brewing science. And I didn't really know what to do. I took a year off and was just working in shops. And my dad said, "Why don't I apply for something a bit more creative and off the beaten track?" And he said, like brewing. And I thought that was quite a good idea. And I had a look, and there was a course starting 3 weeks later in Edinburgh at Heriot-Watt, which is the full bachelor's, so 4 years. And it sounded like a very good way to waste 4 years. So,
this was all meant to be, wasn't it, you see?
It was all meant to be. So I started there 2 weeks after I thought about it. I applied straight away, and because I was an English student and giving them £9,000 a year, I thought they thought fantastic. That's all this money. Because I hadn't got any of the sort of background science. So I had a lot of work to do in the first year and catch up. And then, after 4 years, I had a BSc in brewing and distilling. I was thinking of going to distilling, but it had been whiskey. I love whiskey, but it just takes so long. I haven't got the patience. So went and worked in some breweries. And after 4 years in other breweries, it was then sort of lockdown. And mid-lockdown, I was trying to work out whether logistically it'd be possible to open my own. And the only massive downside was the amount of money it costs to get going in the first place. But just did a lot of planning and gathering money and plunge.
So you didn't start in your shed or in your garage or anything. You started straight.
I knew I had a pretty good idea of a kit size that I thought would be perfect. Worked out did as much of the maths and theory that you sort of can as a forecast, and it often doesn't really make any sense. But I thought a 10 hectolitre kit and 4 tanks, so producing around sort of 1,000 litres a week for myself to sell would be perfect. It'd be quite a hard task at the beginning, but I think it'd be about right to make it worth my time and produce enough so that it wasn't too little in case it did get sort of popular.
So you got quite high expectations of how you could do pretty well pretty quickly then, going straight in with that sort of quantity, because a lot of breweries start out, like we said, literally in their shed with 100 litre
one barrel kit and things like that.
I think a lot of the ways breweries start is friends in the pub deciding that they want to open a brewery, and then going at it at the weekends and making a few batches, and that sort of is the best way to get going, making 50 to 100 litres at a time. No, I knew if I was going to do it, I was going to put the money in and really go for it. So I bought a canning machine, high end. It's the smallest one that Micro can do.
Right.
But it's still the price of a Porsche.
Yeah.
And it's all very well making nice beer in your garage, but if you can't package it and get it to people, there's no way. And it'll be quite hard pressed to find a pub or a bar that will take a keg off you straight away. So being able to can it, for the first few months, I was just canning beer with a fantastic canning machine. So all the beer leaving the brewery was as good as it could be, which meant that I started as well as I could have done, really. And that's made the next few months a lot easier than if I was struggling with quality straight away.
You kind of future-proofed yourself for the next few months, haven't you?
Yeah.
And beyond, actually.
Yes. It's just meant that it's a lot more debt. But it's sort of part of it was the decision that I wanted to make.
So you got your qualification, and then you didn't do the homebrew route, you went and worked for somebody else.
I homebrewed all the way through university.
Right.
I lived with other brewers and homebrewed at home. Made a kit when I was about 20. And but working professionally, it's all very well having all the scientific backing at university and getting all the A's, but if you don't know how to brew with your hands, and I learned a lot more working at Macmillan's in Hertford on how to brew on an industrial scale and all of the other things that are included. It's all very well being able to brew a nice beer, but your cleaning schedule is going to be immaculate, and your planning and having everything in place so that
the brewing is almost one small aspect of running a brewery, isn't it?
Well, it's a 20th of all the things you need to do. It's the bit that gets the talk, but there's so much planning and time management and boring stuff that needs to be done. But the word brewing is much more exciting.
I think a lot of people never It's never on their radar, all this extra stuff that goes on behind the scenes. They just go into a bottle shop or a bar or get a can, open it, drink it, all think this is nice, but there's so much more gone into producing that beer, isn't there? I've got to say, I've opened your Hitchhiker. Dave, have you got the same one there as well?
I have, yeah. So before we just talk about Hitchhiker specifically, I've noticed at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, the beers have all been pale. There hasn't been a porter or a stout or anything yet. I know you've done a red ale, I think.
Yeah.
I had the table beer. I think we both had the table beer first.
That was excellent, yeah.
Blown away by, actually. It was one of the best table beers I've had.
Which one? Was it the Hitchhiker? Was it the Day Tripper or Finger Puppet?
Finger Puppet.
It stood out for being so much fuller than 3. And I think I said at the time, this tastes like Daya, because it was just so reminiscent of that. We've obviously talked about the can art with Daya. Are they sort of quite a heavy influence in how you want to brew your beers? What beers do you enjoy and what beers do you want to keep producing?
I like brewing beers that I would choose in a bar. I completely appreciate heavy stouts and strong dark beers, and really like it when I get it in a flight. It'd just be slightly, at the moment, it'd be slightly disingenuous to go down the incredibly strong pastry stout sort of route. I really like them, but it's just not really me. Lagers and fruity pale ales is sort of my favourite. I've got a couple of lagers in the tank. I've done 2 lagers in the past. They're not hype makers at all. They're just nice things to have. That's what my friends like to drink, and I like to drink socially. Lager probably more than anything. They're relatively faultless, but the actual beers are just so phenomenal. I think the reason I get compared to them every now and then is their beers are very low in bitterness. All of that flavour, that hop flavour, is so the obvious flavour. There's not really any other big thing that kicks out, and that's probably quite similar with my beers. I keep the bitterness quite low, and the water profile. I think all breweries doing sort of hazy New England style beers spend much more time worrying about the water than anything else. But yeah, trying to nail the water so it's is sort of similar to a New England style water. That makes us all quite similar. Our beers. We're all using the same malt suppliers, hop suppliers.
This is it. A lot of breweries knocking out pails, and you're all using the same stuff.
Yeah, but it's tough because it's way more to do with the process than it is the actual recipe, and we're all using pretty much the same ingredients.
Yep.
And the beers taste different.
This Hitchhiker is awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And straight away, I'm not great at identifying hops, but I just tried a bit there and I thought, that's Talus. Looked at the back of the can, and I'm right, it is Talus. It is so fruity, there is no bitterness. It's awesome.
I absolutely love Talus. It seems to divide opinion massively.
I don't know how you could be divided over this.
It's the most generous hop for flavour. It gives so much punch at such little amounts. Yeah, it's just straight away like big blood orange. It's just crazy. I don't know how. It's all the geraniol in the hop. It just gives this incredible flavour. And it's so closely related to Sabro, which gives out such a different, intense flavour. It's a lovely hop. And I see my reviews online every now and then. It really does divide the room. Some people are like, I can't believe you. Another beer with Talus in it. I hate it. Why does he keep using Talus?
So I don't get that. I can't understand how you wouldn't enjoy that. What do you think, Dave? I'm
really intrigued, actually, because you say it's quite a generous hop, and it sounds like it gives so much for so little. That why aren't people using it more? It feels like I only see it every so often, and then when it's used really, really well. So is it actually a hard hop to use, or is it just like any other hop?
There was a big wave of it about a year ago.
And then it just died a death, didn't it?
Yeah, a lot of breweries probably overused it, and it was becoming a fad, like sort of like Sriracha Ace was 4 years ago. Like, people are nervous.
You love that, Dave, didn't you?
I like Sriracha Ace.
One of the last.
Yeah, well, can't get it anymore. But
yeah, when you have a hop just like you experienced that was so very obviously Talus straight away when trying your first sip, I think a lot of brewers don't like that. They like that their beers are more too many complex flavours that you can't pick out a specific hop. I did a previous Talus Pale Ale, very similar, called Hot Hands, it was Amarillo as the other hop. So this has got Simcoe, it's Talus and Simcoe, and the other one was Talus and Amarillo. And both times, Talus is by far the most obvious.
Yeah.
I love Simcoe. I use Simcoe probably more than any other hop. Great as a second hop, it's great as a main player. But yeah, I think the thing that Talus has really got going for it is that geraniol, that sort of weird orangey flavour. And it's really good used hot side in the kettle late addition, because that geraniol prompts the most biotransformation. So if you were to use a lot of Talus towards the end of the boil and then put your yeast in to a geraniol-filled load of work, then you're after all sorts of strange and lovely flavours coming out.
I've seen beers, plenty of them on the back, tangerine and blood orange gets chucked around.
Yeah.
And I actually think they're quite subtle flavours, especially tangerine. And a lot of the time I get irritated and can't pick it out. And I don't think I've got a bad palate. I just can't pick it out. I'm always annoyed if tell me a beer is going to taste of something it doesn't. This is the most tangerine and blood orange pale I've had by far.
Yeah.
I think this is probably almost more artificial orange, like, because it's
heading that way, isn't it? And I don't mean that in a bad sense.
Like how you get strawberry sweets that taste nothing like strawberry, but they taste like strawberry flavouring, which is what we're used to strawberries now tasting like, even though strawberries just taste like sweet cold fruits. They don't really have a strawberry flavour. This is the same sort of thing. It's got this weird orange, intense orange flavour that is probably more orangey than oranges.
So just to put people in the picture, when did you brew your first batch of Baron?
I think it was early October. Or at least I think my first release was late October, so about 6 months ago. I did a few experiments and didn't like any of them enough, so they sort of went down the drain. I've done that a few times. I'm quite cutthroat. Yeah, the first release was called No Cat Chris, named after a bloke who lives around here who's not got a cat called Chris. That beer was I think if I brewed it now, I would still throw it away, but for then I was pretty chuffed with it.
How are you faring it compared to what your expectations were when you started?
Yeah. It's beyond what I had planned. I was sort of forecasting it to be brewing and packaging a lot, but then 7 days a week having to do sales and try and convince people to buy my beer. Sort of the power of the internet and branding and somehow getting a bit of steam behind it straight away means that I don't have to do any of that at all. I make the beers available and somehow people buy them. It's just crazy to me.
We were going to say about that because your web shop, again, I don't like to keep doing it. I don't mean to, but it's very reminiscent of early day. Beer comes out, beer gets sold out. Your stuff does not last long on the web shop, which I think is very impressive, especially as you see now, like a lot of the big hitters, obviously they're using massive kits and whatnot, but they've just got literally dozens of beers that you can go buy now. So I think it's quite impressive to be selling beers out, because I don't think that's the thing that it used to be now.
I don't keep an awful lot of stock back at the brewery. I'm having to do more and more. I'm trying to keep all the shops that sell it and the bars and the wholesale guys on side and try and give everyone an equal sort of share. So if I release a new beer, I normally release 2 new beers every 2 weeks. They come out on the same day. I like to give the wholesalers at least half of the batch because they supply everyone in the country that might want it. I then send the details of the beer to the shops that are within 45-minute drive from me. And then I keep some of it back for me, maybe 10% back for the brewery.
Right.
A bit more than that, maybe 15%. But I try and keep everyone happy, so it roughly sells out in the same places all at the same time. If I kept 50% back for the brewery, there'd be lots of stock on the website, but there'd be quite a lot missing from around the country. But yeah, it's so much more ridiculously easy at the moment than I expected. I was expecting to be forcing people to take samples the whole time. It just doesn't. Also, I get about 1,000 cans out a batch and about 10 kegs, 15 kegs on a good run. So actually the volume is enormous once you're talking about all of the 400-odd, 500-odd bottle shops around the country and 2,000 bars that all sell craft beer. So
are you already thinking about expansion?
People don't believe me when I say this, but I really have not. I've tried to keep it small.
I can see a certain amount of merit in that because you keep people wanting and you keep your profile up.
I talk to other brewers all the time about this, and it's a really lovely position to be in. It's an awful lot nicer to have the demands and not quite meet it than to be able to brew loads of beer and not get it out. Also, I really love running it on my own.
Really?
I don't really want anyone else helping.
What you've created is a brewery that creates amazing beers, is marketed really cleverly. Why would you want anybody else coming poking their fingers into it?
Yeah, it's it's my baby, and I love it. And it's
imagine having to delegate tasks to other people. It'd be very tough, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah,
I'm in your camp.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be a very good boss. Oh yeah, I absolutely can't delegate anything to anyone. I'd much rather just do it myself.
You're a power freak.
Yeah, I think it's just a really.
It is a common trait in successful brewers. We found just doing this every time we meet the sort of mad scientist types who love tinkering with the beer all the time. And the other thing is, it's like, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, there's not enough hours in the day, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, that's all I just want to do it all the time. It's all I think about, all I want to do, and I don't care. I don't think we've met one that's not been a hit, really, have we, Dave?
I think it's that mindset, that sort of tunnel vision, I will make this a success. Those are the brewers that really do well. So it's no bad thing wanting to do it all yourself.
The other thing, usually when we ask about expansion plans with breweries, is do you want a brew tap? Because that's where the money is.
We're planting a load of grass and trying to make it nice. And I'm going to try and have a few events later in the summer, just a temporary event. So opening maybe
see you there
every other weekend or something.
Awesome.
I've got a little Linda dispenser, but yeah, it would be more as a one-off little events rather than a open.
Once you've tasted that success of a tap, though, you'll want more of it.
I'm not completely saying no to expansion in some way. It's just it's a really slippery slope. It's really tricky. Once you start expanding, you can't really stop.
Where do you
Otherwise,
stop?
Something's gone wrong. And if you're expanding enough and the demand keeps going up, and then you decide to stop expanding, and the people that you're trying that want your beer and now can't get it, that they'll just say, "Oh, well, we'll go somewhere else." I think on my own at this scale, it's really fun and it's profitable enough for me. I don't live a very lavish life.
I was just going to say, do you make enough money out of it to sustain your lifestyle?
If the beer's all selling, it's got a lot of debt to repay. But the money's not a problem at all. I'm just going to hike my prices up double. It's still a lot more than I was ever being paid if it all goes well. There's just a lot of costs, and I'm getting better at places that you can save money and easier ways of streamlining my outgoings.
Talking about costs, what about the rising costs of electricity and your raw ingredients? Is that started to impact you yet?
Yeah, it does show. At the moment, because every batch is a one-off and my prices are a bit all over the place, it's quite hard to know exactly where I sit with those sorts of things.
The one great thing about the craft beer industry is that it's full of nerds like us, and we'll pay whatever you charge. If your costs go up too much, you just oak up the price of your cans, and we still pay it. So,
as long as the product matches,
exactly.
As long as there's no drop off in quality, people will keep paying. I think once you've hooked people in and they know they're getting a good beer.
It's quite surprising. The shops I sell wholesale to, the prices are so different in every shop, and those prices reflect what the customer in that shop pays. And I've seen my dippers on the shelf at $8.50 a can. I charge £5 a can, and there's absolutely no worry there.
So this is interesting. How do you feel about places that charge £8.50 for your product that you sell for considerably less?
I don't mind at all. It makes my shop look really reasonable. So the sales go up my shop, and it makes it gives the perception that the quality of the product is exceptionally high. And I don't see
which it is. It should be noted.
I don't mind at all. And they do what works for them, and they're all great. But I'm more nervous of the shops that sell it at a lower price than the ones at a higher price. I love seeing it at a crazy expensive.
Well, like I said, us nerds, we go in and, if we saw a can for £3 or one for £10, we'd probably pick the one that was £10 because we'd think it was better.
Expensive.
We should just touch upon where you are, actually, because I was really surprised because you're in Hertfordshire. You're actually very well served, and you probably do see the discrepancy, because I guess when you're going to distributors down close to the London area, which would be still within 45 minutes, I'm guessing that's where the dippers are coming in at $8.50. And then when you're going out to your east and your west and your north a bit, is that where it stabilises a bit and they come down a bit?
Yeah, you go towards London, everything goes up quite a lot. And then some of I sell some to like the tiny little village shops, like the farm shops, and they sell it at basically exactly the same price that I sell on the website. So they're not actually making any money, but they just like having them on the shelves because they like the look of them. But no, I don't send out an RRP, and I don't like it when they ask because It's completely dependent on what they think will work for them, which is not how business really works. And normally there's very strict, you go up by 50%, whatever. No, I'm all for making everyone's life as easy as possible. And if they want to have something on their shelf at £8 a can, it's probably more likely to reflect them than it is me. But yeah, no, I don't mind that at all.
I'll tell you what I loved on your website, when you can Google where you are and you show the map, there's a little thing on there that says, if you want to come and see us, let us know. We'll be around. Just drop in. I love that. So do people actually just turn up to have a nose around?
Yeah, I used to open at specific hours, and it didn't seem to make any difference. People would turn up at 9:30 in the morning anyway. So I just, I just say, let me know. I'm normally around, except for today when I was doing deliveries. Someone is around. It's situated on my family's farm, so it's there's always someone. My brother works on the farm. My girlfriend is a private chef, and she lives just down the hill. So there's always someone around who can help. But no, I'm around most of the time, and it's just nice if people pop in. Yeah, I love it. I love people coming by. It's a nice place.
There you go, Dave. Go and pop in anytime.
I will do, actually, yeah. I don't think it'll take me that long to get there. I've now moved on to Glug, and I'd like to pick your brains about the hops here, because I don't think I've had either. The first one, HBC 586, which I guess at some point will get named. From where we were a minute ago with Hitchhiker, we've gone through the gears here, and we haven't even done a dipper. This is a 6.8% IPA, but it is night and day to what we just had. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, HBC 586. I was at a nerdy beer convention thing with...
Hold on, which one was this?
Beer X in Liverpool.
Oh, I was at Beer X.
He was there. Yeah. It was great. Yakima Chief were there with a great school. And they had this hop on there. I just hopped this beer with that hop the day before, and then they were there claiming this is the next big hop. So I was quite smug that I'd already got it.
Nice.
But yes, it's sort of HBC 586, catchy. I don't know what I'll call it. It's got a really unique. It's sort of weird. It's like I
can't put my finger on what it is at all, really. Apart from all I would say is all the fruit I'm getting now is overripe.
Yeah, it's like turning stone fruits and sort of mince. It's like I described it to friends as like the bit at the bottom of a Pim's jug. So I think it's sort of all those.
That's a really good description, actually. It shouldn't be, but it is. Yeah. Yeah.
If that's a good thing, it's a weird. Yes, it's a weird hop, and yeah, it's sort of minty, and I quite like that. It's like strange minty aftertaste.
So it's that sort of mad professor thing here is coming out a bit, where you want to experiment with different hops and just see what happens.
Oh yeah, it's all still a lottery. I don't do any tiny batches. It's all full scale batches, and there's hops that I've never played with before, using what I have learned over the years. But it's still I can get roughly right, but it's still you still never know exactly what you're going to make. It doesn't always work, and you have to throw them away sometimes. But I think this is quite fun. I'd probably change it up a bit if I had to brew it again, but I'm not going to brew it exactly like this again. But
so what would you do differently next time?
If I had more of this new hop, 586, I'd probably mess about with it more in the late part of the brew. I used it only in dry hop. I think it could probably kick up some really weird flavors in Whirlpool. Yeah, it's fun. It's quite nerve-wracking when you have no idea what the hop's going to be like.
I would say it's testament to your brewing style, though, and ability, because it still tastes like, now, just having had a Baron beer, it still tastes like a Baron beer, even though, you're on untried ground with the hop. You've still managed to harness it into your style, which I think is impressive.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice to hear. Probably the base of the beer is quite similar. Now, there are some things that you sort of, once you get right, you sort of don't want to mess around with too much. My water, I try and keep pretty much the same for all the hazy East Coasters. Depends how on the strength. I don't keep a double IPA water exactly the same as a table beer, but keeping the water similar. The process all through work production is quite sort of identical each brew, and then messing around with hops and timings on.
It seems to me that the common denominator with your beers is the water chemistry. That's the important thing for you.
Oh God, yeah, it's by far the most important thing. It's the only thing that's mine. Everything else I buy, so I have to make sure that the water.
That's a good point.
Is right, and the water here is really. I come off the mains. It goes through a 2-stage carbon filter and then into a big cold liquor tank. And then when it's in the hot liquor tank, I adjust the alkalinity massively because it's quite hard here. alkalinity, the calcium carbonate is very high. So I try and get that as low as I dare, and then use various acids, and then mess around with salts in the mash. So quite a lot of calcium chloride, tiny bit of sodium chloride. I made some real cock-ups early days with sodium chloride and made these very salty pale ales that were very nice. But once I was sort of really chuffed with that water profile, and it seems to be the thing that people, particularly other brewers, notice about these beers is that they really like the water.
They are so
Which has
soft.
to be a compliment in itself. Like if other brewers are picking that out, then that's surely within your circles, that's the thing. If you go and you've got great water profile, be like,
I don't know what the equivalent is in racing terms. It's like say your horse has got lovely hooves. I don't know.
Lovely glossy coat. Yeah, I mean we've just had these two here, Hitchhiker and Glug. They are so soft.
I love that bottom of the Pimm's jug analogy for this. That is spot on. That's all I'm getting now. I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me or what, but I almost think there is a little bit of strawberry in there now from that.
Well, there probably is some sort of weird strawberry sort of flavour from that. Azaka is also in that. They're in their 50-50. Azaka Cryo anyway. I think Azaka is a phenomenal hop. It can be very subtle, and it's normally used as a backup hop for something big like Mosaic or Citra. But it's a very good, fills in all the gaps very nicely.
It's interesting when you talk about ratios, because we have this conversation quite a lot. I'd love to be able to see on the can what the ratios of the hops are, because you never know, do you?
I sometimes do say, I try and keep the nerdy bits on the cans different each time, otherwise it's just very nerdy. But,
well, what about...
Yeah, sometimes I do say what sort of ratio. What by 50-50, I mean, you've got to compensate for cryo, because it's about double strength of pellet.
Intense, isn't it?
More like 2-1.
Yeah.
But if you were to convert the cryo to T90 pellet, it would be about 1-1.
So just talking about what goes on cans, how do you feel about putting on your cans the amount of calories in your cans, which I believe you're going to have to start doing soon?
Yeah, it's going to be a real pain, because a lot of work. It's pretty much the only food and drink that you don't have to have pretty tight nutritional information on. No, I don't think. I don't think from a perception point of view it'll make any difference. I think everyone knows beer isn't exactly slimming.
Out of interest, though, a typical can of one of your beers, what sort of calories are we looking at?
I don't really know. It's probably quite dependent on the gravity that's left in the can at the end of fermentation is all quite high. I try and keep quite a lot of body in there. There's a lot of sweetness, a lot of sugar. I reckon there'd be high twos, maybe 300 and something calories per can. As a guess, I have no idea. I haven't done any calculations.
I'll tell you what, though, if you want a couple of biscuits or you want a can of Baron, I know what I'd go for.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not even close.
I'll put like a key on the side saying 1 can equals 3 Kit Kats or whatever.
Yeah, nice. I like that.
If you do that, that'll stand out. People will enjoy that even more, I think. You mentioned you've got a couple of lagers coming up as well. What's sort of in the pipeline? What can people expect from yourself in the next few months, maybe?
I am not going to stray too far away from the big hoppy beers. I've got planning to do a West Coast IPA at some point, probably in a month or so. I don't drink very many of them.
No, me either.
It's supposedly coming back in a big way. I've yet to see very much success. It's just nice to keep things a bit different. Yeah, lager's got a Pilsner and I've got a Pilsner that's in tank and tasting quite good at the moment. That's got just Mandarin of Bavaria, which I love. Very nice hop. And then another lager that's just hopped with quite modern American hops on a very mild scale. Mostly it'll be... I might do another table beer as well. I like doing table beers.
I think we've talked about this.
Do another table beer.
Table
Definitely.
beers are quite hot property at the moment, aren't they? People are loving a table beer.
Yeah, they do love a table beer. I love a table beer. I like a beer I can drink at the skate park and not fall asleep.
Especially as the weather gets warmer, table beer's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just very quickly with table beers, do you think brewers have caught up to the idea that you can make a table beer actually taste of something? Because they sort of went for it a little while ago and it was sort of a bit of a continental thing, and I think they'd got it where you'd actually get some hop and flavour out of it, whereas British craft brewers seem to go through a table beer / session IPA and it was all 4%, but it absolutely tasted nothing by the end, like very quickly. But now you're getting these really nice big hoppy table beers, and I love that. I'm with you. Like I now want a couple of those a night rather than 2 6%. So that's perfect.
I think if it's a bigger brewery who are having to worry quite a lot about making margin, if you throw in 8 grams a litre of Mosaic and Simcoe into a table beer and then you're trying to sell it at £2.80 a can, you're making no money at all. So it's probably a bit of that. Also, you've got to brew a table beer very differently. So you've got to be very aware of your unfermentable sugars. And if you're brewing it like, if I were to brew it exactly the same way as I would brew an IPA, it would be quite thin. It'd just be a very watery IPA. So to get the most out of your malt, you need to mash in a lot warmer. I boil quite long. I don't know if it makes much difference. I use Maris Otter instead of standard extra pale for table beers. Just things that give more malt character. Because if you've got a very weak, very watery beer that's got hop flavour, it just tastes like hoppy water. And if you don't add enough hops in, it's not ever going to taste very much at all. It's just tough to do. And every one I try is better than the previous. It's definitely something I'm still getting better at. It's a great style. I think also a lot of people are put off because you can buy some very good. You can buy a Colonel table beer for very little money, and it's a benchmark.
And it is a very, very, you're right. That is a benchmark for table beers,
and it's cheap and it's great.
Yeah,
and Colonel is like a bit one of the goats. So
the Colonel we've found are amongst brewers, they're the gold standard, primo.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating because as a wider world as the consumer, they're almost like they're almost like the sort of alternate pick because like they've never gone for it with their labeling or anything, and once that came around because that sort of stood out where everyone went really funky with can art and they were like, no, we're going to stick with bottles and it's just going to look really bland or boring, but then that sort of came around to be like, oh, that's actually quite cool in its own way and
it's clever.
When you go into most bottle shops, you just see a rainbow of crazy colours.
Yeah.
And then you see the Colonel loitering in the corner. The brown in the corner.
Slightly off-centre typewriter script. That's spot on.
It's I
think they're the hipster's choice within the hipster's choices, aren't they? Like,
yeah, they're incredibly. You've got to go down a deep down the rabbit hole to get to the Colonel. It's like one of those cliches that all brewers just want to drink lager. It's the same sort of thing.
Like all brewers just want to drink Colonel.
Yeah, it's the same. Like we just want to be the Colonel. And they got the beauty of doing it that way. Is they don't have the core range really. They have core sorts of styles, but they just mess around as much as they want and. They don't have to worry about new names, new labels. They just type.
It just feels like you go in any bottle shop and it'll have a few kernels. And you go, I've never seen that one before. I've never seen, like. There's always something different. Yeah. They've always just chucked out something random, and it's like, oh, I like that because.
Definitely. As are pretty much all breweries. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah, of course.
You're all just making it up as you go along, aren't you? Basically.
Yeah, we're just big kids.
So look, if people want to get hold of your beers, they can go onto your web shop, can't they? Are you doing national distribution, aren't you?
Yeah, I do UK wide shipping. Or you can. I've recently started sending beer through Bruiser, which is a new subscription site.
Yep.
They're great. I'm not able to do an awful lot on there. I think I do about 24 a month, but it's a really good platform for. It's an awful lot better than the alternative beer subscription services. There are some very bad ones.
There
are, and none of them would ever have your beer.
But yeah, Bruiser or from the web shop or from various bottle shops popping up around the country. It's such a weird world, and it's all through the power of social media. I was selling beer in Glasgow before I was selling it in my local town. It's the beer community is just so great. I just love it.
So look, if you haven't had a Baron beer, you need to get one because we've had two tonight. We've had some before. They've all been superb, haven't they, Dave? Really, really excellent.
Yeah, but obviously Jack is still on the call with us, so it don't want it to feel like it is just blowing smoke. But
no, if they weren't good, we'd tell you.
These are seriously good.
You need to do some sours at some point. Maybe a nice Berliner Weiss or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like the sour sensation.
Look, but I love them.
Anything.
It's time now on the podcast to take a look at our favourite beer since the last episode. In our regular feature, Tried and Tested. And we'll go over to you, Dave, first.
Thank you. Yeah, so my choice is a bit odd because for a peek behind the curtain, when we do this podcast, it's sort of spread over a few weeks because we
we can't really film it or record it all, should I say, in one hit. So it's actually been a little while since we spoke to Jack from Baron Brewery.
Look at it. Look at it.
And I haven't had anything before or since that's been better than Hitchhiker from Baron Brewing. So I know this is a bit of an odd one, but I've been away in Italy and I haven't really had any beer of note out there. But the beer that stands out the most in the time between these episodes, where I haven't perhaps had as much craft at my fingertips, is Hitchhiker, because it was so good. The blood orange, the tangerine, it's all there. Great pale. Over to you, Dave, for hopefully something that we haven't talked about already.
Well, I mean, to be honest, that beer was so good I could almost pick it as well, but I will go for something different. Now, every now and again, the guys, Hannah and Paul from Hall, come over here and we drink far too much, and we had a bit of a stout session recently, and there was a lot of really good beers, but one of them was from the mighty Equilibrium, and it was called Deep Space Brain Freeze from December 2020, so sort of 18 months ago, and this was just an awesomely good stout. It had got strawberry in there, wafers in there. It was just, it could, in the wrong hands, those ingredients could come out not that well, but it was just beautiful, thick chocolate strawberry milk. It was amazing. We know Equilibrium do some top-notch beers, but this was perfect, and we all really enjoyed it. Hannah, Paul and myself gave it a massive score on Untapped, and quality all the way from Equilibrium. Well, hopefully you've got 2 cans right in front of you now, and you're ready to take part in the Daftaboutcraft drink along in association with our friends Hall at Hall Beer Shop, the beer specialists. And we've got something a bit different this time. We've got a Scandinavian special, 2 beers all the way from Norway. And 2 beers from 2 breweries we've never heard of and know very little about.
Yeah, so I was just having a quick look to see what Norwegian beer I'd had, and probably a lot of people listening to this will have had a lot of Norwegian beer, but it would, I would imagine, come from Amundsen.
Yep.
I've had plenty of Amundsen. I've not had as much Lervig as I thought I'd had. I've also had one from, you'd know them if you saw them, it's like they're black cans usually with an O with the line through, which is...
Oh, I know, yeah.
Yeah, and that's about it. But the 2 breweries that we are going to be discussing here, we know next to nothing about.
That's good, isn't it? What an informative podcast this is. Bet you're glad you tuned in for this one, guys. The drink along section is where we have a beer with you and we tell you what we think of it, and you hopefully tell us what you think of the beers. You've got them hopefully from hall-beer.com. Basically, you tell us on Instagram what you think and we can compare notes, as it were. But we also use the drink along as a time to tell you what we've been up to and to discuss any sort of points from the craft beer scene we might like to raise. Anyway, we've got these 2 cans. The first one we're going to open is from Sleeping Village Brewing, who are a contract brewery from Oslo. And the beer is called Mirror Pyramid, and it's a Spelt India Pale Ale.
Yeah, so the back of the can says that, as you just said there with the spelt, this is going to be the thing that's hopefully we're going to notice as being a bit different. Spelt sort of being another type of a derivative of your barley and your rye as a grain.
Yeah, it's from the same family, isn't it? It's related to wheat, barley and rye.
They say on the back of the can that using pale malts, wheat and spelt creates a smooth and decidedly different overall grist. In fairness, the tasting and smelling notes are a bit different because there's pine sap, pear and citrus.
Have you tried it yet?
I've not.
Wow, that's very nice. I think you like this. I think it tastes nicer than it smells.
Oh, it does. The pear's there.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
And that pine bit as well.
But not that really, not that...
not a West Coast type.
No,
pine.
not that sort. The hops involved here are Mosaic and Amarillo. I think what you're getting to start with is that Mosaic, but it's kind of dialed down a little bit to usual, and there's more of a fruitiness coming through.
It is muted. And the Amarillo's also a bit muted as well, because I always think of Amarillo as being very soft, but also really sort of standard tropical fruits smell and taste. And you don't quite get that. You do get citrus, but there's nothing
too much. And yeah, there is pear, which is odd. It's not like pear drops pear or anything like that. But
No,
there
it's
is
a
some...
subtle fruity pear, so
Mm.
you've got a bit of pear stuck in your teeth at the back of your mouth almost. You can it's just there, isn't it?
It's also worth saying this is 6.8% as well. So it's,
Gotta say, it doesn't taste like nearly 7%.
No, it doesn't actually. It really doesn't.
Well, these guys, they've only produced 25 different beers. And I think this seems to be one that they've produced a few times because I think it was their 6th or 7th beer that they made. So it seems to me one they brew again, it must be popular. And I can see why. Certainly wouldn't mind trying another spelt beer.
But yeah, I'd be interested in that. They've obviously got some skill there
absolutely, yeah.
To use something a little bit different and coax out some different flavours. I really like that.
Maybe your newly found friends in Italy need to take a little holiday to Norway and see how the Norwegians do craft.
Well, we were saying before we were recording, because I was down in Sorrento, so I wasn't exactly in a hot spot, but there was a craft beer bar there, and you could tell that what had happened is it probably come up as sort of a Belgian beer place. Quite small, quite dark inside, sort of a lot of wood panelling, really keen on all their Belgian stuff.
That's the one you posted a little film on Instagram, didn't you?
Yes.
For anybody who saw that.
Bottega della Birra, I think it was, or something like that. But yeah, it definitely had its roots in Belgium. They've got a lot of Belgian stuff still. But in fairness, for their craft, they were keeping it local, or certainly to the country.
But from what you've said, you would quite have liked there to be some imports there.
Well, it was quite interesting because I think when British people, because we're very lucky and very spoilt with what we have as craft, I think we just look across at America and think, oh, they're killing it. Like, they're so far ahead of us, like, or what they do. And I think actually we've probably caught up more than people realise. Italy is definitely behind where we are, because I felt like I was having beers that I'd had a couple of years ago. There's not masses of experimentation yet. I sort of thought, well, I'll go for something classic to start. I sort of said, oh, can I have a nice double dry hot pale? And I got one, and it was okay. It only lasts in the memory at this point because of the fact I had it on holiday and the experience of doing that, etc. And then I was after a saison, and they didn't have a saison. Or they didn't have the Italian one that they said they might have in the menu, and instead I got offered a Belgian saison, which I'd had before. I think the owner came over and sort of said, "Oh, try this. This is a bit different. Really small brewery." And it was a lager, and it had been fermented differently, but I mean, it wasn't like wild or anything. It was perfectly fine. And interestingly, the Italians take on British beer and that, because I started talking to him about it, and he said, "Oh, well, yes, but you have camera," which I thought was hilarious. Yes. I never thought I'd hear camera mentioned in when I was out on holiday in Italy,
craft bar in Italy.
And I sort of said, "Well, yeah, but they're a bit more traditional. Probably not quite." So it was good that it was there, but I think the scene is definitely still sort of in its infancy compared to we are, which was sort of quite fascinating in itself.
It is interesting, isn't it, to see what the craft beer scene's like in different places. I went to Ibiza a few years ago. I was amazed to find craft bars on the tiny island of Ibiza, and quite good ones too, albeit that they were run by British people.
And were they importing, or were they had a lot of Spanish stuff? Because you would think, like, if I think of Spain, I think of sort of garage straight away.
Yeah, they'd got Spanish. I think they'd got some imported stuff, just looking back, but they'd got Spanish as well. I think Spain's craft scene does seem to be in front of Italy's craft scene.
Yeah. Well, I can think of sort of 2 or 3 straight off the top of my head that I really like from Spain, whereas I know with Italy there was that Cieso. I remember their beers coming over to a bit of fanfare.
There's crack as well from Italy, isn't there?
There is, yeah. That's often immortalised in films.
CRAK rather than the CRACK.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about them. Yeah, see, there wasn't any of their stuff.
That's interesting.
They'd kept it very. Like, there was some Cieso because I stayed away from that because I knew I'd had it. So I was a bit like, no, I want to see what else there is. But sadly, the stuff I had, I wouldn't be trying to sort of track down.
But this is all part of the craft beer thing, isn't it? You'll go somewhere and yeah, they haven't got anything you like, but You're always learning from it, though, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I've taken away, but I'm not too worried about.
You'll take your own beers next time.
If a retailer gets in some Italian stuff on a shop, I'm not going to be too worried. Whereas to bring it all back around, I would be interested if Hall or any other beer places suddenly get some of this, some other Sleeping Village beer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good.
Very, very interested in this. Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, this one is going to be just as good. I mean, it's a complete departure in the can art from one to the other. The sort of Sleeping Village is, I'd say, quite serious, quite grown up. There's a bit of sort of arcana, mystic sort of stuff going on there.
Then it's like a trip in the 70s, the next can, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all very pop art and psychedelica.
Yeah.
And this beer is Uvula Drive-Through.
Yeah, I mean,
which
I've
is
got to say, it's a terrible name.
Waiting to happen.
It's a terrible name, and maybe the translation doesn't quite shine through there.
No, I don't think it does. It is, and it is Marlow Bobo's Mega Bear, 8% Dipper, generously hopped with Nelson Sauvin, Galaxy, Citra, and Mosaic. And if we thought it was hard getting information about Sleeping Village, it's even harder to get anything about Marla Bobo because the website is coming soon, if you have a look online. By the looks of it, not actually brewing on their own site yet, because this was brewed at Disco Brewing, which are far more established, and I think they're in the same sort of region, actually, as Sleeping Village and Drammen.
What I can tell you is they actually seem to be another contract brewer, and they've only had 33 different beers, not that many. I think Sleeping...
You said 25 Sleeping Village?
Yeah, 25. So the information we have, which is limited, suggests maybe they've been around for a similar amount of time, which isn't that long. But this isn't a spelt beer. This is your more traditional double IPA.
It most certainly is. Yeah, it most certainly is. Yeah, the nose is...
horrendous.
It's aggressive, I was going to say.
No, and horrendous is a bit much. It's quite intense, isn't it?
It's a very Galaxy nose, I would say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But the nose on the previous beer was very different to the contents of the glass. So let's see how this shapes up. Well, the Galaxy is certainly there, but it doesn't end with a really bitter hit, does it? It's quite soft.
Try a second sip.
Oh, he's always one step ahead. That was different to the first one. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I don't quite know where I am with this beer.
Gotta say, that doesn't taste like 8%.
It doesn't taste like 8%. It actually is. I don't want to say thin. Thin's not the right word, but it's not a big full dipper, is it?
No,
almost?
no. Which I don't mind at all. Don't mind that.
But to look at in the glass, it is classically hazy.
It's real hazy, isn't it? You're not seeing through that. If you swirl it around your glass, there's lots of little bubbles sticking to the side of your glass. I think I maybe like this more than you do.
There's two weird things which I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks. So pepper, and it's also slightly weirdly savoury.
You know what we need, Dave? Cheese.
Yeah, well, it could go well with cheese, you know.
It's all about the food pairings. This could go well with cheese.
That could go well with cheese. That's not a bad shout. That's not a bad shout.
Unfortunately, I polished off some really lovely cheese last night, so it's too late. Right, so you're more of the cheese connoisseur than I am. So if you could pick a cheese or two to have with this beer, what would you go for?
Well, the two that sprung to mind. First was a really mature cheddar, like a really mature one, not like your Cathedral City or something like that, but something
with a bit of a punch.
Real punch. And that sort of, rather than being able to slice it, it almost sort of flakes, if you know what I mean.
Oh, nice.
One of those ones. And then the other one, even though I don't like it that much, I wonder if it could still cut through, would be sort of a normal Wensleydale, not with the ones where they put anything with it, but just sort of that. Oh,
your standard. Yeah, okay, I can see, yeah.
What about you?
I really want some cheese now.
Want
cheese. I said I'd had some cheese the other night, and I had, and the cheese I've got in my mind was an aged Gouda called Old Amsterdam. It's got a really sort of real taste to it. I think that would go so well with that. But like I say, if you're at home now and you've got these cans and you've got cheese, try it and tell us what you think. I'd be really fascinated to know.
Yeah, the more you drink that, the stronger the Galaxy gets. to that point where you've said before where you're not wild about beers when the galaxy starts to take over. For me, the galaxy's starting to take over in that.
Interesting. Let us know what you think. Send us a message on Instagram. We'd love to know. So, we've got 2 breweries here that we hadn't heard of before today. And I love this finding new breweries. It's what fascinates me. But one of the problems in this industry is that, but all of a sudden we've started to see established breweries closing down. We've got 2 examples from recently, Beatniks in Manchester and also Kellam Island.
Yeah, which is a shame. You never want to see a brewery go out of business for any reason, really. You can sort of argue it's sort of survival of the fittest, and if you can't do it, you can't do it. I did read an interview with the Beatniks founder, and he seemed to cite cost as the main sort of reason for packing it in. It just everything had skyrocketed and just wasn't able to sort of maintain it. But then it is a shame. I would just say on the flip side, it's not putting off people from starting up every week, as you say. So there's got to be money in them hills type thing. So if you can do it, you can do it. And perhaps, we might see this happen to a few others, unfortunately.
I think it does seem to be a bit of a trend now. When you've got Kellam Island, they started in 1990, Sheffield's original alternative brewery. 32 years they've been going. It's a long time.
That one was more of a surprise, actually, because Pale Rider is the one everyone knows of Kellam Island. I'm pretty sure I've had it at some point on cask, and I'm pretty sure you've had it. And that's a surprise when breweries like that. It's sort of, to me, now I'm not from that area. I wouldn't have Kellam Island.
Yeah,
they'd sort of appear as a guest in a pub for me, but say that to me, that's a bit like a not quite an Adnams, but
they're solid in their area, aren't they? Very solid.
Synonymous with one beer. If that'd be a bit like if Titanic went almost. Now I know their plum porter's probably a bit bigger, but to me, or Dutchers or something like that, like breweries that you sort of grow up with a bit and see on the pump clips all the time. So I thought that was a real surprise.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I think the thing is, you've got to support these local breweries, haven't you? The trouble is, there's so many now as well. We want to support all of them, don't we? As many as we can.
We do. And I would also say the other problem is a lot of pubs now, just with sort of Kellam Island in mind, the problem I have around here, a lot of the pubs are either Green King or Adnams owned. And if you go in one of those, what do you get? Green King beer, Adnams beer. Well, Adnams, I would say, is
better than
okay, but Green King, yeah, sure. If a vast chunk of the market in their own backyard isn't available, what hope have they got?
We were speaking to Jack Elliott at Baron. He can get his beer all around the country. How come you don't see your Kellam Islands in Birmingham, in Cambridge, in Norwich?
Yeah,
maybe this is part of the problem.
Kellam Island had been going 30 years, and perhaps at the start, your local trade was sufficient. Maybe if you don't adapt and you're able to put it out there, you can, but we just don't know. Like, we're not, they've obviously decided it's not financially viable anymore, and it is a real shame. And I just noticed earlier we were talking, and it's not restricted just to the UK. Spencer's Brewery, Spencer Brewery, I believe, which is the US's only Trappist brewery in the whole of the country, that's closing. And they've cited the fact that they're now not, they're not what they once were, in the sense that, the US's only Trappist brewery was a great USP probably 10 years ago.
What a selling point.
But now, not so much. And I said to you, with them, it's quite weird because I've seen their beers when it was a bit easier to get hold of the US stuff. I remember seeing their beers. I've seen it in the bottle shop in Bury St Edmunds. I've seen their stuff elsewhere as well. And it's never ended up it might have ended up in my basket, but it's never made its checkout, which is really weird.
And that's the trouble, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's because there's so much choice. And I seem to remember their stuff, and I'm going back a few years because now I wouldn't blink at it, but I seem to remember I had a look at their stuff and be like, ooh, £5-6 for a beer when I can get some German beer for £2-3. Oh, I don't know if I want to do that. And then I'd put it back. Obviously now I wouldn't be too worried about that kind of thing, but if everyone keeps making decisions like that, that's what can happen.
Yeah, more. if people do, more breweries are going to not survive.
Yeah, it is a shame because you want breweries to carry on. But I suppose in such a crowded marketplace, and especially now with the sort of pressure that most people, and I would, happily include myself in that, have on their income, or you start to think about what's spent, and craft beer is a massive luxury.
Yeah. But I know there's brewers out there who are worried about paying their electricity bills in their brewery.
Mm.
This is a new thing, and this is gonna be more and more of a talking point as the months go by.
Yeah, I don't think we've started to see that bite yet, but it will. The big breweries, I suppose, can afford to take the hit in the utilities and whatnot.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to keep up and you're trying to fling out a lot of beers as well, it might be that that's going to become an increasingly expensive operation, and it wasn't cheap to begin with.
But I think as craft beer lovers, if we do find our favourite breweries are upping the price by 50p a can, whatever it is, I don't know, and we can still afford to buy their beers, we need to support them because it could be the difference between their survival and their failure. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed the couple of beers we've had there from Norway, 2 breweries we knew nothing about. We know a little bit more now.
Yeah, we do. I think for me, Get the Sleeping Village. I really like that beer. It's a little bit different. Like the flavours, like the use of spelt.
Really different.
And if you like Galaxy, then Uvula's Drive-Thru is probably the beer for you. It's not a bad beer. For me, a little bit too heavy on the Galaxy, and it's just not quite for me. But you liked that. You liked it.
I think I like that more than you, Dave. And if you didn't get them to drink with us here, you can still get them from Hall. Pop on to hall-beer.com. Search for Drink Along, and there's a Drink Along pack on there with these 2 beers. Put them in your basket, and you get 20% off with the code DAFTHALL. And they weigh in at just over £12, I think, for the pair, which is great value when you think they've been imported from Norway.
I was going to say, when you think how much Scandinavian beer usually sets you back, to get those beers for that price is a bit of bargain's perhaps stretching it, because it's still £12 something for 2 beers. But even so, in our little world, that is a bit of a bargain.
Yeah. And we should be back with another Drink Along in 2 episodes' time. So watch our socials and we'll let you know what the beers are and how you can get involved.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
Now, since we started the podcast, we've had some real big hitters on the Hype or Tripe. Real strong stouts, real wacky sours. But this time, it's not a big hitter, is it, Dave, in terms of ABV?
It really isn't. This is nearly at the complete other end of the scale, because it only weighs in at 4.2%. So
what is it? What are we doing with it?
Why are we doing a beer that's 4.2% for Hype or Tripe?
Well, tell you why, because this is what the brewer believes to be Britain's very first all-oat pale ale. So, as it's a first, we were really intrigued and we wanted to get our mitts on it. It is from Attic Brew here in the Midlands, and it is called Silk Parachute. Now, silky smooth is what we're expecting this beer to be. It should be massively thick and creamy, just full of oats. You've poured it, Dave, is it?
Well, yeah, so as Dave says, all oats, no barley, which I can only imagine, and perhaps if this is a roaring success, we will have to talk to Tim the brewer to get a bit of a lowdown on just how you put this together. But to pour, it is silky smooth. To smell
is amazing.
The smell is amazing. It just says simply as a description on the front of the can: rich, tropical, soft. Well, it pours brilliantly.
Wow.
It comes out a really... It's better than straw yellow. It's it probably
almost like a honey yellow.
It's not a million miles away from when you get the can, and we'll put the can on our socials. But the yellow they've used for the can,
it is. It's very close.
It's not far off that, to give you an idea.
In the Whirlpool, it tells us that the hops. Oh, how weird! It's another Talus, Dave.
Yes.
Motueka, Nelson Sauvin, and Talus, and in the dry hop, Talus, Motueka, and Citra.
I actually really like this.
Whoa! Hooray!
Which I'm really pleased about. I know
Yummy.
I know you were
Yummy.
quite nervous about this because Attic are close on your doorstep.
Well, I
you
love
like
Attic. I love going to their tap room on a Sunday afternoon and just sitting lounging around in their award-winning tap room, no less. And I actually took you there as well, didn't I, Dave? When you were up here.
That was actually now sadly a couple of years ago, and we went in, and I did like the tap room setup, and that's now expanded as you were telling me because they've expanded themselves.
Knock through into next door, and all the brew kits in there. You can still see it, but the original tap room now doesn't have any brewing equipment. It's just tap room, so they've got more space.
Excellent. But I remember being not exactly that impressed with the beers. I thought they were fine, but I didn't think they were any better than that. I haven't had an Attic beer for pretty much a year. And the last Attic beer I had wasn't that impressed with, to be brutally honest. However, this I am impressed with.
Excellent. We've often said on this podcast, you can have a beer from a brewery, maybe not like it, but always go back 6 months, 12 months later, see if it's more to your liking, and this fits in really well with that.
It is exactly what it promises. It's soft and it's tropical, and it is pretty rich. I would say, weirdly, because I often sort of say, I'd love to see this on cask or keg. I don't think I want that. I certainly don't want that on keg. I could be interested in it on cask.
I can see why you're saying that. You're not going to get it on cask, but if you did, I can see how the style might suit it. I think it would be even softer.
Keg, I could just see it getting that bit gassy, and that would put me off. But in a can, it's perfect. No issues with it in a can either. There's not masses and masses to say about it, I think. As a feat of doing all oats...
Yeah, go for it. Love it. Do it again. And maybe this is something that'll catch on in other breweries or take on board and try.
I suspect there's a bit of a labour of love here because just on the back of the of the can, the description says oats are loved by brewers for the luxuriously silky body they bring, which I completely agree with. But without the aid of barley, they are notoriously difficult to brew with.
It stacks up really well against quality pales. I think that's a real triumph, actually. That's really good. I'm quite lucky where I am because not only have I got Attic nearby in Birmingham, but I've got a little cafe a 10-minute walk away, and they've often got Attic on tap, which is great. I'll often go in and, have one in an afternoon. I'm a big fan of Attic, but I think this has turned you a little bit, Dave, from not being too fussed about them to thinking, yeah, they know what they're doing here.
Yeah, the next time I see any of their stuff, be it online or in a bottle shop, or if I'm lucky enough to be back in the West Midlands any point soon, I won't dismiss it out of hand now. I will think, okay, what else they got? I'm tempted to have a little look on their range now on the website, see what's available, see what I fancy getting in and trying them again. 100% oats, works 100%, and well done Attic for making a really nicely soft, fruity, balanced beer.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.
Daft About Craft.
You've been listening to Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast, sponsored by Hall Beer Shop in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. Check them out at hall-beer.com.